We want to welcome in our next guest. That's Derek Yen, a senior investment strategist for Crane Shares, to help us look back at what we heard from Chinese e-commerce and cloud services powerhouse Alibaba. Derek, good afternoon. Thanks for joining me. What did you make of their numbers?
Thank you for having me. I think the number reported Alibaba as one of the top holding our Crane Shares China Internet ETF KWEB. There's 18% growth on this Ali Cloud this quarter, which is pretty good. But however, I think investors has much higher expectation on that number. So investor has near-term overestimated the growth of Alibaba's AI cloud, yet we think they underestimated the 2 to 3 years growth potential for this cloud of Alibaba. So in the near term, we know like Alibaba's like Qwen's large language model and DeepSeek, they're open source. So that makes a lot of actually startups and second-tier model companies paused on their training for the foundational models. So they started building the AI applications, especially the Agentic A.I. applications. So that transition is making the near-term demand for the Ali Cloud decline, while the inference gonna accelerate in the next 2 to 3 years. We think that's kind of like a misalignment for the market and investors.
Derek, one question that I actually have here, is there any issue when it comes to trying to build out the infrastructure for, let's say, an Alibaba or others that are trying to build out these data centers, these large language models? Is there any type of disruption, or are we seeing pretty much the same quality of product from those players like we are seeing here in the United States?
Yeah, I think it's the same trajectory like what happened in the United States. You do have very high demand from both consumer and enterprise side on the AI cloud, but it's a little bit different because in China, the current version of this large language model is really cost efficient. So they don't actually need the latest, the greatest NVIDIA chips. They can just rely on the few NVIDIA H20 to really perform the similar performance. If you look at the benchmark for Alibaba's Qwen in all the AI large language model benchmark, it's actually pretty high. But if you look at the cost and the infrastructure needed to power that computation is actually much smaller compared to the US. So that makes Alibaba's actually doable to really power the growth of China applications around AI across the internet companies.
Derek, when you look at, if we take a step back then and we look at this entire kind of space as a whole, where we talk maybe it's Chinese tech firms or just Chinese stocks as a whole, obviously ongoing negotiations between the U.S. and China has weighed on sort of sentiment of all risk assets back and forth. Are we worried about anything like a yuan devaluation or something that could really provide a shock to an investment in something like Alibaba?
I think we had that like after the Liberation Day. All the tariff risk is really creating a disruption from the fundamentals. Those companies, especially the China internet names, we see is really deep value, right? Look at their forward earnings, it's like almost 30 to 50% lower compared to their US peers. And we do see this AI is really boosting the earning growth going forward over the next 2 to 3 years. So all those fundamentals, I think, is overlooked by investors because of disruption of the trade. But I think from the Sunday's negotiation, we do have a de-escalation on the tariff side. That's removed a lot of the worry and a lot of terror risk investors have been putting on the China internet names. That's really making, I think, a rethinking or like a now reconsideration for a lot of investors to reallocate the capital outside the US now to more Europe and emerging markets. China is a great candidate for those looking at deep value companies.
Yeah, definitely getting a little bit cheaper here today with many of these names under pressure. Derek Yen, we appreciate your insight and thanks for taking the time and joining us this afternoon with your thoughts. Senior investment strategist for Crane Shares.